cross-examination.
Good morning. Dr. Garrett, what percentage of the population has a mental health disorder?
Oh, I don't know. Do not know the answer to that question.
Okay. Is some type of mental health diagnosis pervasive in our society?
Yeah, because the diagnoses range from very mild to extreme. So yeah, we all have symptoms and things that bug us.
Okay.
That could fall into a category.
All right. And you'd agree that having a mental health diagnosis is not the same question as whether somebody is criminally responsible, correct?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay. And somebody can have schizoaffective disorder and still be criminally responsible.
They can.
And somebody can have borderline personality disorder and still be criminally responsible.
They can.
And somebody can have cannabis use disorder and still be held criminally responsible.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you specifically, I'll go back sort of to the beginning. You talked about how one of the things you diagnosed her with was cannabis use disorder. And in your report, isn't it true that you indicated that Ms. Driver told you that she believed that that CBD had high levels of THC in it?
Yes, she told me that.
Okay. And when you were testifying about the reasons for your diagnosing her with cannabis use disorder, you talked about the intoxicating effects of THC, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so in making that diagnosis, are you assuming that there was THC in that substance?
Yes.
Okay. And so if you learned that when she went to the hospital on December the 8th, she was tested and she tested negative for THC and the substance was tested and only tested positive for CBD, would that change your diagnosis?
Yes.
Okay.
It would change that one diagnosis, not the others.
Okay. And you also put in your report that Ms. Driver represented to you that her use of CBD was involuntary, correct?
That she said that she wanted to use CBD oil that she purchased online, but she wasn't allowed to, so she was given the CBD oil that was brought in by a friend. She didn't know its source, but that after a while it was not helping her and she felt like she felt worse, but she was then required to keep taking it.
Okay. Are you aware that Ms. Driver was evaluated by 3 different doctors in this case? Dr. Ballard first, then you, then a Dr. Zom?
I heard about the third evaluator recently, but I've never seen a report or any information about that.
Okay. Were you aware that she told Dr. Zom when asked about the CBD that it was still in her bag, but she doesn't even remember if she was still taking it?
I'm going to object. She just said she doesn't know anything about Dr. Zom's report.
I was never given the report. I've never been told what was in the report.
Sustain the objection.
All right.
You strike the question too, since you read the report into the record.
I'll rephrase my question.
All right, I'll strike that question and you can
I'll
move on.
rephrase it. If she told Dr. Zom that the CBD was still in her bag, but she doesn't even remember if she was still using it, would that be inconsistent with what she told you?
It would be inconsistent to the extent of whether she remembers it or not. That doesn't necessarily mean she didn't take it.
Okay. Now you indicated that, I think your language was that you became aware of the fact that she was still communicating with Benjamin Ben Michael after your evaluation. Is that right?
I heard something about her accessing text messages or some sort of communication device from within the jail.
Okay. But you spent over 4 hours with her on August the 11th of 2022 and September the 2nd of 2022?
Yes.
And she told you all kinds of things about her relationship with Benjamin Ben Michael and how abusive and oppressive it was, right?
She gave me a lot of information.
Did she ever tell you in your 4 hours together that she was still actively communicating with him on hundreds of jail phone calls?
She did not.
Okay. And as part of your forensic evaluation process, is it typical for the evaluators to tell the defendant what the possible options and outcomes are for each? For example, would you explain to her the concept of not guilty by reason of insanity and what would have to be found in order for her to avail herself of that defense?
Yes.
Okay, and that's typical, right? To
It is.
Explain that to them?
It is.
Okay, so she would have known from the jump what would have to be proven for her to establish that defense.
Not from the jump.
Okay.
That's not the first thing you tell them. I went through the entirety of her background. I already had gathered all of her mental health symptoms before we even talked about any plea options. So she had already given me her background information, what she had experienced during childhood, what she experienced in terms of her drug use history, what she had experienced with the cult, what she called the cult. And it wasn't until the competency evaluation when we talked that when we went through all the different plea options and what their meaning and consequences are, that was the first time I gave her any information about what the not guilty by reason of insanity plea means.
And when it comes to people in your type of position that do these types of evaluations, is it common to explain what not guilty by reason of insanity means?
Yes, we've got to make sure that the part of the competency evaluation is to make sure they understand what the different options are and what their potential consequences are.
Okay.
So yes, we go through each one of the pleas.
All right. And she had already met and been evaluated by another doctor, Dr. Ballard, prior to you seeing her, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And do you know what Dr. Ballard discussed with her about what had to be established for the insanity defense?
I do not know what her proceedings are. I don't know when or where or how she might have covered that topic. I'm sure she would have covered that topic, but I don't know if it was the first thing or the last thing.
Okay. And you indicated in your report that when you met with her, let me get your language here. You found her to be able to maintain a reality-based conversation, and the statements that she made during the interview were logical, coherent, and relevant.
At the time of the evaluation.
Okay. So when you met with her, she was stable on her medication, and you didn't have any concerns about her being able to...
The first time she was mildly hypomanic, but yes, she was generally stable. The second time she was depressive, but she was not actively hallucinating.
Okay. And you indicated that she relayed to you that the relationship and the status of the sort of polygamist lifestyle was positive?
I didn't ask her about that.
Okay.
She relayed to me that she joined the group, that other people joined, and that at the end she was questioning things. But we didn't talk in any depth about how she felt about the relationship in the early years, the sort of the honeymoon years. We didn't talk about that.
All right. Well, did you talk about how she felt about those relationships in the later stages?
She didn't talk about the sister wives at all. I don't know why I used sister wives, because that show, I guess.
Okay.
But the other wives, she didn't. She talked about them existing, but she didn't say good or bad things about them.
So when she met with you, she expressed complete indifference about all the other people in the group and her lifestyle.
Yeah, she just described it. She didn't say whether she had thoughts or feelings about it.
Okay. And are you aware that she told Dr. Ballard, who evaluated her, that she initially didn't mind having multiple women and that it made sense to her, but the reality of it was very toxic and stressful and very hard for all of them to get along?
I don't have a specific memory about that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. And are you aware that she reported to Dr. Ballard that there were frequent arguments, sharing an RV with Mr. Joyce and the other wife, and then a third woman joined, which added to the conflict?
I don't have any recollection
Okay.
of that.
That would be inconsistent with what she told you?
Not particularly, because I didn't ask her.
Okay. So you did not inquire about sort of the dynamics of the group on December the 8th of 2020?
I talked about what she was experiencing and feeling. I didn't ask her about other people.
Okay. So you didn't get information about Jason Spillers or Jessica Kafijian?
I knew that they were there.
Okay. But in terms of her thoughts about that relationship and how that related to her decisions to commit the act, you didn't get into that at all?
Those were not the basis for what she told me was why she behaved the way she behaved.
Okay. But one of the things that you were capable of reviewing in this case and had was her handwritten notes from December the 9th of 2020, the day after she killed Hannah, right?
I did have those.
Okay.
Or at least I had some. I don't know if I had the totality.
All right. So in terms of her very first statements about why she killed Hannah, are you aware that she said, "I was going insane and no longer wanted to be with his friends, but kept coming back for him"?
I don't have a specific memory of that, but I may have had that piece of information.
Okay. Are you aware that in her first statements about why she killed Hannah, she said, "I only wanted my baby and husband, but he refused"?
I don't remember that.
Okay. You'd agree that her own statements the day after she killed Hannah about what motivated her act would be highly relevant to her state of mind the day before?
It'd be relevant, not necessarily dispositive, since she was medicated and in trauma,
Okay,
but it would certainly be relevant.
all right. So your evaluation of her was taking place in 2022, and these statements she was making to law enforcement was the day after. Can we agree on
So
that?
it would definitely improve her memory.
Okay.
So, for the record, she made those statements at the hospital, not too long.
I'm sorry. She made them to law enforcement at the hospital. And did you, in reviewing and reaching your conclusions about this case, review all of these handwritten notes that she
I
provided
reviewed
to
the
law
ones that
enforcement?
I had.
Okay. Can I approach and show you and see if you recognize it?
Sure. I don't recall this one.
Okay. And in your report, Mhm. In your report, you indicate that one of the things you received were the Kennestone Hospital handwritten notes of Chloe Driver, correct?
Yeah, they actually said Kennestone Hospital on the top, and that one didn't, so I'm not sure. If I can look at my notes, I might have a copy of the ones that I actually
Okay.
reviewed, if that's okay.
Are you, I can approach. Is this what you're referring to?
I think the other records that Ms. Driver had.
Those are the ones that I had.
Cruises notes, not the Kennestone Hospital.
These are the ones that you
Those
have?
are the ones that I have.
All right. So you would have known in your evaluation of her that Ms. Driver told the psychiatrist at Kennestone Hospital, I was stating for months I couldn't handle my husband's lifestyle anymore.
I would have had it. I don't specifically remember everything that she wrote. There's a lot of information in this
Okay.
case, I'm afraid.
And you would have known that she wrote to the psychiatrist for the first 2 years, not so much because it was just us traveling, but then once he got people listening to him more, I started feeling scared and was begging for attention for us to be with the baby.
I don't remember that one either.
Okay, so these statements about her begging for attention, her not liking his lifestyle, these statements that she made close in time to the crime, you did not factor those into your determination about what her...
There were certain ones that I remember reviewing, saying that she felt, can I reflect, I can't remember whether you, I don't think I got an answer on whether I could review the notes that I had to reflect
Sure,
my
of course.
recollection.
You can't read them, but you can refresh your recollection of them.
course. Let me just see if I have them here.
You can read it, you can't read it.
Can't read them aloud. I hear ya. That's the one thing. Okay, yes, I did review that.
You did review what?
The document you just read.
Okay. And are you aware that she made statements that, to law enforcement the day after she killed Hannah that stated, I just wanted to have a normal life with Nimsy?
I don't have a specific recollection. It wouldn't surprise me, though.
Okay. And would statements about wanting to have a normal life with her baby, wanting to be with just her husband and her baby, and wanting to be away from the cult, would those things be delusional?
No?
Okay. Those would be rational, right?
I believe so, but they could be influenced by her mental health condition, but yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about Ms. Driver's statements in evaluations and in the investigation of this case that are relevant to her ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Are you aware that one of her first inquiries while in the hospital was, how long will my prison sentence be for killing her?
I have heard that.
Okay. And from a psychological standpoint, let me rephrase my question. Is that consistent with her statements to you about her ability to distinguish between right and wrong.
It certainly reflects an ability to distinguish between what's legal and not legal.
Okay.
There's a little bit more gray area when you're talking about right and wrong on a more ethical, moral appropriateness level.
Okay, but we're talking about the law. So would you agree with me that she has expressly made statements that she understood what she was doing to Hannah was wrong?
She did state to me that she knew that it was wrong, but she also stated, I was at peace because it's how it's supposed to be. So there's, again, both sides of that coin. Yes, she appeared to understand a legal wrongfulness, but there is some question about the moral and appropriateness in her
Okay.
mind.
And you said you had Dr. Ballard's report when you did your evaluation. Are you aware that she told Dr. Ballard, as soon as it happened, I regretted it. I thought I shouldn't have done this. This was not supposed to happen.
I said before, I didn't read her report all that carefully. I did review her report, but I don't remember the specific things that she said. But a statement like that after the fact also would not surprise me.
Okay. So you'd agree that the best historian of whether she understood the difference between right and wrong would be her, correct?
Maybe.
Okay. And when she was expressly asked if she thought her behavior was wrong, she said yes.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. And in being evaluated by Dr. Ballard, are you aware that when she was discussing whether she knew her actions were wrong, she also volunteered that she locked the door so that she could also stab herself in the throat and make sure that she died?
Yes, I'm aware that she had locked the door to try and kill both herself and her daughter.
Okay. And are you aware that those were statements made by Miss Driver in response to whether she understood what she was doing was wrong?
Yes,
Okay.
based on her report.
Right. Well, and you're relying heavily on her report for your testimony about her delusions,
And based on
right?
the other psychologist report.
Understood, not Ms. Driver's report? Okay,
Yes, I did rely a lot on Ms. Driver's report.
okay. And with regard to your inquiry with her about whether she understood what she was doing to her daughter was wrong, isn't it true that she told you that she apologized to her daughter before she repeatedly stabbed her in the neck?
She did say that she apologized.
And I want to talk to you about her statements to you surrounding the actual event. You'd agree with me that the pertinent question for purposes of criminal responsibility are state of mind at the time she committed the act,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So the testimony you just provided to the jury was from childhood to arrest, correct?
Yes, throughout the whole course of her life.
All right, so I want to talk about December the 8th when she's in the room with Hannah,
Okay.
okay? What information did she provide to you about what she was doing in the room with Hannah just prior to her killing her?
She indicated that she had come from the 12 tribes meeting where she had believed that they were talking about death to give her a specific message that now was the time to do this thing that she'd been getting messages about, to kill herself and her daughter. And that they got to the location, and that when she went to go join the other two wives in one room, that Mr. Joyce snapped at her and said, no, go to, she called it Brett's room. I believe Brett was somebody who previously lived there or previously traveled with them. So she told me that she interpreted that instruction as an instruction that she should kill herself and her daughter. She indicated that she was trying to do some research on her phone about how to get away, how to escape and move money and things like that. And that she went to try and change her daughter's diaper and didn't have a diaper and asked for one to be brought to her, and somebody threw her a dirty shirt instead, and that she interpreted that giving her a dirty shirt instead of a diaper as a statement to her that she's not worthy of this world and she needs to leave this world. She's not even worth a clean shirt. and that therefore she should kill herself. And so that's when she said she did it.
Okay. And she told you, and you put in your report, that she was alone with Hannah in the room and she was doing research on her phone about bankruptcy and how to get away with her daughter.
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware that she had a phone with her in that room based on her statements to you and based on your review of the police report, right?
Right, she said she was doing research on her phone.
Okay. And you also put in your report that she didn't have any access to money. Is that right?
She had told me that part of the deal with joining this was that every woman who joined the group had to turn over all of their funds and put into a joint account to make it more spiritually strong. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but that everybody had to donate all of their money to this account, and that they were not allowed to use it without express permission or access it without express permission.
Okay. And are you aware that she had $1,000 cash in her bag with her phone and the baby's effects?
I did not know that.
Okay. Are you aware that she told Dr. Zom, who evaluated her, that when she left her parents' house, she
Judge,
put...
I'm going to object again. We've already been down this road about what Dr. Zom's report says. She never got it.
I'll rephrase it.
All right.
If she told...
No.
If she told somebody else that she put $1,000 cash in her bag before she went back with Benjamin, would that be inconsistent with her statement to you that she didn't have any access to money?
Not exactly. And let me explain, because I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. But she had talked about in the time when she went to try and get her mother, of trying to put together some money, trying to access some money, trying to move money towards her parents. So there was some indication already that she was trying to move money around, trying to save up, trying to do something that would help her escape with her daughter. So I didn't specifically ask her whether she had access on that day, so I couldn't say that it was inconsistent with her financial situation on the day.
But she represented to you that she didn't have any access to funds, right?
Overall, over the course of the relationship, that's what she said.
Okay. And you were not aware that she had $1,000 cash in her bag?
I was not.
Debit cards in her name, were you aware of that?
I did not know. I didn't
Blank
ask.
checks that related to an account that had $65,000 in it?
I have no information about that.
Okay. With regard to the actual event, we talked about her telling you that she knew it was wrong, and her statement to Dr. Ballard that she knew it was wrong and immediately regretted it. And we talked about her statements about locking the door to make sure she could accomplish the acts. I want to talk about the specific trigger that caused her to kill Hannah. Did she tell you that Benjamin throwing her the dirty shirt for Hannah was the last thing that triggered her, that nobody wanted her or Hannah to be here?
I believe that was the last trigger, yeah.
Okay, so she needs a clean shirt for the baby. She tells you he throws her a shirt up to the window. He's in the driveway and tosses her a shirt up to the window, and it's dirty.
That's my recollection.
Okay, and she indicated that was the trigger that told her nobody that wanted her or the baby to be there.
That, on top of 3 months of seeing signs and symbols of those things, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess.
Okay, but on the 8th, in terms of her state of mind, on the 8th when she committed the act, that is what she relayed was her trigger for committing the act, correct?
It's what she relayed was the last thing that happened before she triggered the act. I mean, nobody can be parsed into one moment in time. Everybody's life builds upon itself. So if 3 months of seeing everything as being a sign that she's supposed to kill herself, the fact that it was a shirt that finally tipped it over, the last thing that happened, doesn't mean that's the trigger. It's the last thing, the
Sure.
final thing.
Right, but if this jury is going to evaluate what her state of mind was at the time of the crime, you'd agree that her state of mind closest in time of the crime was what was happening in that room with Hannah on that day.
Not really, because like I said, we're not just a moment in time. My sitting here in this chair, speaking to all of you, and having butterflies in my stomach and, anxiety is not just because I'm sitting here right now. It's because I've sat here before. It's because I've sat there before. It's because I've experienced it before. And all those experiences lead up to how we interpret events. And unfortunately, in this driver's case, all of those experiences were, you shouldn't be here, you're bad, you're going to be punished, the world is going to end, and you and your daughter are sinful and you need to not be here anymore. And every single new thing is not a separate thing, it's an additional thing. It's adding a weight on top of a weight, on top of a weight, on top of a weight, until the bench finally crashes.
How much information did she give you about exactly how she killed Hannah? Was her memory intact? Did she have any problems giving you the play-by-play?
She basically said it was fuzzy. She remembered that she had done it. She remembered that she had harmed herself and harmed her baby, but that was, I didn't get first I stabbed her and then I stabbed her there and then we didn't do that.
Did you ask her?
I asked her what happened and she told me what she could remember as far as I could tell, but I did not try and get a blow by blow because that's not necessarily relevant to my question.
Her memory of the event is not relevant to her mental state at the time she committed
She
the crime?
remembered it happened. Her memory of the specific identified details is not, it could have changed over time. I asked her to tell me as much as she could remember. She told me what she told me. It was relatively vague, but I did not get I moved my arm this way, I moved my arm that way, I moved that arm the other way.
Okay. Did she report to you that her memory was vague?
She just gave me a vague report. I don't remember what she said about about the quality of her memory.
Okay. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what specifically vague means, because obviously her mental state during the commission of the crime, what she did, what she remembers, is relevant to whether she understood the difference between right and wrong and what motivated her actions. So let's break it down. Did she tell you that she went downstairs and grabbed a knife from the knife block in Gerald Aglin's kitchen?
She did not.
She did not tell you that. Okay. Did she tell you that she didn't even look at the knife? She just walked up the stairs, looked down, and closed the door and locked it?
She did not.
Okay. Did she tell you that she was scared that somebody would come into the room if she didn't lock the door?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she played a lot of video games and she knew that if you stabbed someone in video games, they die immediately?
She did not.
All right. Did she tell you that she fed Hannah, breastfed Hannah, and then laid her down on the bed?
She did not.
Did she tell you that at that time Hannah was happy?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she laid her down and stabbed her in the throat?
She did not.
Did she tell you that she stabbed her once, but she wasn't dead, she was just quiet and bleeding out?
She told me that she stabbed her.
Okay. Did she tell you after she stabbed Hannah once, she stabbed herself in the throat 3 times?
She told me that she stabbed herself.
Okay. Did she tell you that at that moment she was standing there wondering why they weren't dying?
I don't remember that.
Did she tell you that she was confused at that moment because they were supposed to die immediately?
No.
She did not?
No. I don't have no recollection of her saying that.
All right. And did she tell you after she was confused about why they weren't dying immediately, she went back over to Hannah and stabbed her in the neck again?
She did not.
And did she tell you that when Benjamin broke through the door, that's when she tried to stab herself in the heart in her chest?
I know that she did subsequently stab herself in the chest after stabbing herself in the throat, but the specific timing of it I don't recall.
Okay. And if she had made those statements to another doctor in this case, would you agree that her memory was substantially intact?
Sounds like it.
Okay. And you didn't inquire about those details, or she didn't give them?
I didn't specifically inquire about the blow-by-blow. I talked to her about what thoughts and feelings and experiences that she was having leading up to and during the event.
Okay. All right, we talked a lot about her delusions. And you indicated that just because you have a delusion or a delusion disorder doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be held criminally responsible, right?
You could have a delusion that the sky is really purple, and that doesn't mean that you needed to go and shop with a 6-pack of beer, so no.
Okay. So I want to talk to you specifically about I'm going to try to do a modern day flip chart here, so bear with me. We will complete this together. All right, can you see this on your screen? Can you turn on the screen, Yorna?
It's on.
Okay.
Just warming up.
All right. All right, I want to talk about what delusions she indicated she was suffering from on December the 8th of 2020. And I want you to tell me what they are, specifically what the particular delusion was, and whether that related more to her general worldview or whether that related to Hannah and the acts that she committed against Hannah.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay?
But you're presuming that a person who is mentally ill has got something that's this easily definable. There's a lot more mud in this water than a box over here and a box over there. So I will do my best, but
Well, you have used the broad term, she suffered from delusions. And this jury is going to have to make findings about what particular delusions and how those related to the act.
Okay.
So I need you to try in terms of your professional capacity and in terms of the information you collected and what Ms. Driver specifically reported, because whether she had a delusion is not the issue. The issue is what the particular delusion was.
I understand.
So if you could tell me what the particular delusion was, and on December the 8th of 2020, I don't need to talk about her delusions from childhood, what her delusions were on December the 8th of 2020, and whether those related to and were connected to the act of murdering Hannah, or whether those were more worldview delusions.
Okay. She had delusions of reference
Okay?
that don't appear to be related in any way to their worldview or religion. So I would put it under the particular delusion connected to the act.
And what delusions are you discussing?
Those are the delusions that everything in the world was telling her that she needed to kill herself and her daughter. That's how she was interpreting things that people said, things that people did, objects in the environment.
Okay, so just a general, everything was telling her to do it.
Well, she had specific things that she mentioned. She mentioned the people at the 12 tribes talking about accepting death.
Okay.
And she interpreted that as being a specific sign that not only was she supposed to do that, but that this was the time. I believe she said something along the lines of, she was like, oh yeah, okay, that's it then, this is the time.
Okay.
So people talking about death, seeing knives in her vicinity. She had been talking about that both before and during the event. She talked about, those were the two biggest ones. She talked about a whole bunch of other things, odd beliefs about the world that may have been things that her husband taught her. I don't really know much about his belief system that he's set up.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about there being only 169,000 people in the world, and that everybody else is a demon-controlled robot or something like that.
Can we talk for a minute about the difference between a delusion and a bizarre belief?
Mm-hmm.
You use the word conspiracy on direct. There's a difference between like a delusion and like a conspiracy theory. So when you're having like a group mentality, like a cult, and they all subscribed to like a particular set of beliefs, and you're not just evaluating one person's mental state, but a collective belief, that doesn't necessarily have to be a delusion, even if it's a fixed belief that is seemingly completely disconnected from reality.
Generally speaking, but if you take a set of instructions and a set of circumstances in which the only information that a person who already is delusional, and give them that information, just because it's consistent with the information doesn't mean that it's not playing on her delusions, increasing her delusions. She already had delusions that were paranoid, that people were out to get her. So when you add on top of that instruction that is firmly rooted in this guy's power and ability to say, your paranoia is correct, The paranoia you already have is accurate. Your parents are working with the CIA. They're out to get you. Everybody's out to get you. That does not help a pre-existing delusional situation. So yes, it could just be a firmly held world belief, a religious belief. Certainly some people don't believe other religions and think that's weird that people believe the things that they believe. But in this particular case, you're talking about a woman who was already damaged. She was already delusional. And you pile more false information on top of that, and you can exacerbate that existing delusional set. And so you can make delusions worse. You're more likely to believe the information that's given to you if you're already delusional, if you're already paranoid, and they say, oh, yeah, but you're not paranoid. The CIA is really after you. You start to believe that, and if that's all you hear, if that's everything that's everybody around you, and that's how cults work generally, I'll give you that. That's how religious movements work. That's how all of those conspiracy theories work. But the problem is that in Chloe Driver's case, there's clear evidence, well, not clear evidence, self-report, which is supported by other information, that she already had delusional beliefs and she was already susceptible to that. So they were just made worse by this situation. So while that may be a firmly held religious belief, it's also possible that it's delusional in her case, because not every sovereign citizen is crazy, but some sovereign citizens are crazy. In the vernacular.
Sure, and crazy and criminally insane are not the same thing.
Not the same thing, I know,
Right.
I understand.
And crazy and subject to criminal responsibility are not the same thing.
That's correct.
Okay. So I want to go back to this. With regard to her thought process on December the 8th of 2020, based on her self-report, your evaluation, your review of the file, were there any other particular delusions, and what were they, that were connected to her act of murdering Hannah?
The other one that I would say would be the magical thinking that she experienced. And that is also related to the religion that she was being taught, that she was being fed on a daily basis. But she was being told that she had the capacity, the ability to change the world, cause pain or solve pain, cause a catastrophe or save the world from a catastrophe. And she already had magical thinking before this. She had beliefs that she could read minds. There was all other things going on with her before all this happened. So if you put this in there, and she also had an experience of having been punished for not stopping the pain, not correcting whatever she did wrong. She talked about having walked the wrong way and been told she had to do a weird dance or walk backwards to make it right, that she had this power to make it right and also the power to make it wrong. Another time she talked about being punished for not putting out the right energy by being forced to stay in bed for 24 hours, not allowed to use the restroom. She urinated on herself, that kind of thing. She talked another time about when she was pregnant, she was put into an RV with or a trailer of some sort with all the windows blocked, and the room was completely dark, and that while she was in there, she was terrified, that she was screaming, that she was seeing things, that it really messed her up. And
was that a delusion on December the 8th of 2020 that related to the act of Hannah Driver?
so I'm getting there.
Okay.
So the ideas of reference, the magical thinking, this belief that not only can she affect the world, but she must affect the world, or else she's going to get punished. That's not necessarily delusional. The punishment is not necessarily delusional, but the belief that she could actually change the world is delusional. And then you add that to her belief that she was sinning, that her daughter was sin, that both of them were being told that they were not right, that they were not supposed to be there, that they needed to be gone. That combination of symptoms was all at play at the time that she committed this act.
And she made statements that she believed she was sinning because she was married to a man with more than one wife. She had a baby with a man that was married to someone else, correct?
Those were some things that were included in, I think, her searches on her internet.
Okay. And the statements she made about Hannah were that she felt like she was passing her sins on to Hannah when she breastfed her, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And she talked about downloading her sin and pouring her sin. It was sort of like a generational sin kind of thing.
All right. And as it relates to what her particular delusions were on December the 8th, 2020, that related to the act of why she murdered Hannah, can you think of any other specifics that we can put on this list?
Those were the ones that really stood out to me. I'm sure there were other thought processes involved, but those are the ones that I really remember.
Okay. Did she ever indicate at any point in any material that you have reviewed that she was afraid of Hannah?
No.
Did she ever indicate that she thought Hannah was a threat to her?
No.
Did she ever indicate that she felt like she had to defend herself against Hannah?
No.
I have nothing further.
Redirect.
Yes, Judge, just briefly. Can I leave that up? No?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, I just want to clarify, as Ms. Cropper was asking you questions, she was typing in here that the save or harm the world, walking the wrong way, having the right to walk backwards to make it right. You actually described those as applying to the delusional aspect of Ms. Driver, correct?
I think it's probably both. It's one of those ones that maybe you should have a over the line kind of thing, because she was experiencing those thoughts at the time, according to the way she described it all to me. And it is relevant to how I thought about what happened. Because there was an element of, I could be punished and I could experience bad things, I could cause harm to other people if I don't follow the instructions that everything is telling me that I need to kill myself and my child.
Sorry, I'm a horrible typer, apparently. And I can't spell. Goodness. Okay. So maybe they apply in both categories.
I mean, these things kind of bleed together when you're talking about somebody who's got a mental illness and is fed odd beliefs.
Now, Dr. Garrett, to be clear, you do not believe that Ms. Driver was even though she was suffering from a mental illness, she was not in a 24-hour, 7-day state of delusion. Is that fair?
Nobody really is. Symptoms come and go. They fluctuate. They can be episodic. They can have periods of time where they're really bad and they might get better for a while and then get bad again.
There are specific things that would trigger her particular delusions that she was experiencing, as you described it.
That's the way it seemed, and things would happen in the world that she would interpret as being directed specifically at her, and that would trigger distress.
When she's interviewed after she's arrested, whether in the hospital or at the jail by law enforcement, or rather interviewed at the hospital by medical staff or by law enforcement, you would agree with me at that point in time was not the same day as the day of this incident, right?
At a minimum, I believe it had to have been the next day. She was in procedures and sedated the first day according to the psychiatric intake.
Were you aware at the hospital that she was provided fentanyl when she first got to the hospital?
I did see that they gave her a lot of medications to help treat her pain and calm her down.
Those medications could help her calm down and return to, I think, what kind of you described as more of a sane state. Is that fair?
Yes.
It is fair to say that anyone in a sane state...
I'm going to object to the leading nature of his questions. This is his witness.
Does someone in a sane state understand the difference between right and wrong?
Typically.
Does
what somebody thinks when they're doing well versus when they are in distress. I mean, even take out psychosis. If you're in real distress, you're stressed, you're traumatized, you're scared, your memory is different, your way of interpreting the world is different. People who have a traumatic experience may block it out for a period of time and then it may come back. Even some of the statements that were made to the police in the investigative summary talked about how she wouldn't even really remember she would snap and lose all sense of herself, and then would apologize afterwards, and she didn't even know it had happened. So there is, once you come out of that state, you can look back on something, hindsight's 20/20 for all of us, and say, oh, that was wrong, that was bad. But at the time, maybe not, who knows?
How would you expect someone that is sane to react when being told that they've killed their daughter?
Distraught.
Would they express
Scared.
remorse?
I'm sure they would. I would.
Are you aware that Ms. Driver did?
Yes.
Mr. Gropper asked you about explaining the NGRI findings and conditions in order to make that a defense in court. You discussed that with her, correct?
Yes.
That was discussed with her after you had already talked to her about all of her mental health background, her background with pre-Ben Michael, with Ben Michael, leading up to December.
Mm-hmm. I always get mental health history before I talk to anybody about the NGRI or any of the other defenses or plea options, because I don't want them to change their answers based on what the criteria is for.
Did you have any reason to believe that she was telling you these things in order to fit this narrative of an NGRI defense?
I'm sure there was some element of that, but not the driving force. I mean, there's always some element of that, that she believes that she knew she was getting an evaluation for that purpose. So I'm sure there was some element of that. But all of her statements were consistent over time, consistent to me, consistent to other people, and consistent with what other people said about her. And so there was a lot of evidence that the symptoms she talked to me about were things that existed before, during, and after the alleged crime.
In your statement about the trigger of the incident that day, about the clean shirt and her not feeling worthy of a clean shirt, you're not saying that that is the specific thing that made her do it. Really, it's a combination of things she experienced over the months leading up to that day.
Yes.
Including the 12 tribes that morning, including the treatment through this religious cult group aspect, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, hang on. But the receiving of that shirt, the dirty shirt, I think you actually expressed it in your report, that was an indication that she was not worthy of life, and that's why she took the action she did.
That was the last thing that happened before, according to what she told me.
And that is an example of the delusions that you are describing that she was suffering from.
Yeah, that's a sample of the delusions of reference, interpreting innocuous events as having special meaning.
Okay, thank you.
Are you familiar with the concept of a murder-suicide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just because somebody wants to kill themselves doesn't make it not a murder, correct?
Correct?
Someone can want to die and still be criminally responsible.
Yes.
Okay. Did you say a moment ago to Mr. Kessler that Ms. Driver did not express any remorse for her crimes?
I did not say that.
Okay. He said a sane person would have remorse, was his question to you?
Well, yeah, he did ask that, but then he said, are you aware that she expressed remorse? And I said, yes.
That she did express remorse?
Yes.
Right. And in the hospital, she in fact wrote, "I'm sorry I killed her," right?
I understand that, yes.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Any further questions of this witness, Mr. Kessler?
No, ma'am.
All right, any reason to keep this witness?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may be excused. Members of the jury, we are going to conclude today's proceedings at this time. We're going to let you have the afternoon off. Please leave us your notepads, and as I have been instructing you, do not have any conversations with anybody, do not do any research about this case, including any